Hey, what's up, everybody? I was going to wake up and do a quick Sunday morning squat session, but I went out to the garage gym and it's a little cold. So I figure I'm going to hang out with you guys. I'm going to make a quick video on diagramming out all your different tool sets so we can see how they interact. I'm going to chug down some pre workout. And hopefully, by the time this recording is done, the gym will be a little warmer and I can get out there and knock out some squats. But let's talk about what we're doing today. Today, we're going to put together a diagram that shows the interaction between the tools all the MSPs use or you use, right? Over the last probably 5 years, there's been like this avalanche of agents we have to manage. Back in the day, it started off with simple tools like a PSA and maybe an RMM, and we were really striving for like this single pane of glass. I think that's gone way out of whack since then. Um, and because of that, it's hard to keep track of not only all the tools that exist and keeping your team sort of up to date on that, but also trying to understand how they interact with each other, which gets really important because when you're troubleshooting things, you're seeing like weird data mismatches between our tools. You need to understand how things sort of fit together, and building out diagrams helps. I'm using Lucid Charts today, but you can use whatever diagramming tool you want. Heck, you can use MS Paint. You could draw it on a whiteboard. You can do kind of whatever you want, but I like to do it this way. Um, Again, pick the shapes that you see fit. I don't think there's a set thing for this. This one's called a process shape, but we're going to just call it a tool. I like to start with the centralized data, right? And for most MSPs, that's your PSA. Most of the MSPs I work with are using things like ConnectWise PSA, used to be called Manage. So we'll throw that kind of in the center. And then we kind of start building out from there. We also use tools like IT Glue, maybe, right? IT Glue. So whatever your documentation management solution is, this could be Hoodoo, this could be whatever else. And then we can start adding in sort of our tools, right? We might have our RMM agent. I'm a big fan of Incentral. We might have, we definitely are managing M365 for customers, and that's sort of syncing up with people. All right, so we'll do M365. Might also be doing like we might have LionGuard installed. Right, we have all these different tools. Friends over at ThreatLocker for sure. Got to have their tool in there. All right. And I'm not going to list every tool you're going to use, but the idea is that you might start with all these tools that are used um, on the client side. And then as you sort of expand, you're like, okay, what else do I use? I might use some accounting tools. I like to separate my tools client side and internal side. So we might have things like, I don't know, life cycle insights. For some reporting, we might have something like Bright Gauge for dashboarding, right? I have some Bright Gauge there. And we're going to clean up the location of all this stuff in a bit. Might have some stuff like your accounting software, so maybe QuickBooks. Might have something like, I don't know, maybe you're using like a tool like Shreddy or 90 or something like that for your EOS meeting management. All these kinds of tools that sort of get out there. You might be using a third-party tool like Cell or Zomentum or one of those tools for, um, for getting quotes out. So anyway, the idea is that you'll start documenting all these tools, and what you can start to kind of see is one, there's a lot of them, but two, how they sort of interact. Right? You can start picking up some connection lines, and you can say, okay, well, I know ConnectWise and IT Glue sort of talk to each other, and we're going to make that a two-way arrow because it's a bidirectional sync, right? Configs from PSA drop into IT Glue and vice versa. We might have information coming from LionGuard pumping into IT Glue. We have some stuff from M365 flowing into LionGuard, maybe. We definitely have Incentral dropping in tickets into our PSA. And maybe also dropping in some assets into IT Glue if we have it set up that way. But those are all single directional, right? We're not necessarily doing bi-directional syncs with ConnectWise and IT Glue back into Incentral, so we'll keep those that way. And the idea here is that we're able to just start documenting how things interact with each other. ThreatLocker can create tickets for us, but it's not pumping in information necessarily into anything else. Maybe you have M365 or Purview or one of those other applications that you want to break out also creating tickets for you. So again, we're putting information here. Now ConnectWise is syncing outward to our finance software so we can invoice, right? We might have ConnectWise dropping some information up into Bright Gauge. We definitely have it feeding into tools like Lifecycle Insights so we can get information for reporting. Maybe we have Shreddy creating, I don't know, or whatever other tool you're using, creating tickets in ConnectWise for to dos. You can start drawing out and labeling all these kinds of interactions. That way, it's a little bit easier to just see what's sort of happening in your world. If you start seeing that information that you're getting from Lifecycle Insights doesn't really match Bright Gauge, you can now easily go and say, okay, well, where does that information actually come from? Where is the source of truth that we're dealing with? And it's ConnectWise PSA. You might say, okay, well, where's our documentation management solution getting all this information from? Where are techs interacting with this data? And you can kind of say, okay, well, maybe that's actually coming from LionGuard. Maybe it's coming from ThreatLocker. Maybe the ticket is being generated from Incentral. But the idea is that over time, you can start seeing some of these interactions, right? We want to say ConnectWise Cell is here. So we'll give it a little connection, a bi-directional connection over into connect, and you can actually make little extra dots here in lucid charts. That way it stays nice and clean. But we'll say it's a bi-directional connection. Get rid of this one that's going to kind of nowhere, right? And you can kind of start seeing how things are interacting, where they're interacting, and what could go wrong if the data isn't working properly. This list on the right, this customer centric set of tools, this gets really, really large really quick, right? Like you might also have, in addition to your threat locker tool, you might have it like an EDR. I don't know, maybe you have Huntress rolled out. You might have your backup solution, right? So you could have like Datto or something. You might have some type of vuln management tool sort of deployed. So you might have like SecPod or Tenable. We can go with Tenable out there. And all these different tools are sort of throwing out information. And I think often people forget that these tools even exist sometimes until you start really writing it down. I mean, we're up to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different things where we're managing for a given customer. And this isn't even a complete list. Like if you're using something like, I don't know, Vonahai for pen testing or for automated pen testing, I should say. Um, right? You might be using something else out there. You might be using some other, cloud-based platform, like Box or Dropbox or something, something out there that's doing things. You could have Adobe products. You'd have all these things out there that you're managing and syncing information for. Um, but once you have this kind of framework in place, I like to then go and kind of color code it because I'm a big visual person. I like seeing who's using what tools. So you might say, okay, we're going to this is an all-encompassing tool. Everybody in the company is using this, so we're just going to leave it that color. But maybe QuickBooks is a finance tool, so we're going to go ahead and change the color of QuickBooks. How do we change this color? We'll make it, money is green. We'll say, yeah, that's a finance tool for sure. Shreddy, that's going to be an administrative tool more than anything else. So we'll make it, a nice yellow. These service delivery based tools. I like blue, obviously. So we're going to make all service delivery things this nice, clean blue. Microsoft will appreciate that also. But you can quickly start labeling things and making them really visible and very clear who uses the tool, who's responsible for the tool, maybe, and how the tools interact with each other long term. And what this does is, one, you can see what tools you have and how big that stack is getting. If you go down another road of start trying to align these tools with what they're supposed to do, and if they're completing and accomplishing that as part of your product development lifecycle, that you get bonus points for that. But for here, we can see what tools exist, how they talk to each other, where the integrations exist. And from a general like stack health perspective, you can maybe once a quarter go through and make sure these integrations are working the way you're expecting. Make sure that they're still communicating with each other. That way, things aren't falling out of sync. We hear lots of complaints about configuration information between your PSA and your documentation management solution maybe not syncing, or your Bright Gauge or your other whatever dashboard tool you're using, showing maybe dated information on reports. And if you're using things like Lifecycle Insights, maybe up-to-date warranty information isn't feeding in, or some other asset information isn't feeding in the way you'd expect. When you're looking at reporting around financials, maybe hours expended on a customer aren't truing up properly, so you're not getting true agreement efficiency ratios or EHR or whatever other metric you're using. All that data tends to rely heavily on the interaction of these tools, and then also the human element of data interaction. So putting a part here that says, hey, this is actually human specific input. I think that's a very critical into label, right? Like, where are people injecting data directly? If you see a single direction like this and people are putting, stuff in ConnectWise and they're expecting it to end up in your Shreddy tool or your 90 tool or whatever, but it's not syncing in that direction, you're going to be off track. If you're putting data in QuickBooks, but QuickBooks is only a single direction from ConnectWise and you're expecting that data to end up in ConnectWise, it's actually not, but let's go with it. You can kind of see where mistakes can start happening. If you have account managers putting data into Lifecycle Insights or editing data in Brightgauge using manual data entries and things like that, and then you run your reports from ConnectWise because you're trying to true up things, you're going to see different data. So really understanding where human input should be taking place, where that data, where that source of truth data is, really, really important for good, consistent reporting across all your platforms, and just for truing up things like invoicing, and making sure you're paying vendors appropriately for what you're consuming, and making sure you're remaining profitable. But anyway, that's the tip for the day. I'm going to finish up this drink. I'm going to hope my garage is a little warmer, and then I'm going to get a good workout in. And you guys have a great day. See ya.